Hi. Hi.
Hey. Hello.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. Okay. Let me unmute. How am I unmuting Madeline? Okay.
It's unmuted.
Okay. Doug, we've got to unmute Doug. So we've got.
He can unmute himself.
Hi.
Okay, so we've got Barbara, we've got Christian, Barbara, Josh, Madeline. We've got a quorum.
Yeah, we have a quorum, yes.
Great.
Okay. And give me one second.
I do full screen. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
And Madeline. Let's do a gallery view. Gallery, there we are, guys. Good. Just got the gallery view. Everybody's unmuted. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We got a quorum.
Okay, we're ready to leave.
Okay.
Barbara,
What?
we're ready to leave.
Oh, okay. Excuse me 1 second.
Hi, William. Hi, Natasha. Hey, Susan, you made it. Holy moly.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. So, we've got a quorum. How are we doing, Mark? Let me know when we can get started.
Whenever you're ready, go right ahead.
Okay. Hi, Robert, with a cigar. Okay. Hi, Shelley. Okay, so the first order of business is our first order of business.
We had no business left with them except for them to.
Meeting, so we're starting at exactly 6:31. So,
Hey, hello, everybody. Hello.
hi, everybody. Okay, so I'm going to ask everybody to kind of mute yourselves and then we'll. So here we are. Our first order of business is, I believe, 898 Amsterdam Avenue. Do we have the application, Christian?
Yes, give me a second.
Put that up so everybody take a look at it.
Yep.
Which is really the original reason why we're here. Hi, Matt. Not up yet. This is a new application, but it's not a new application. It's a I believe he has to renew it. It's an application for renewal for Casa Mexicano at 898 Amsterdam Avenue. It's pretty pro forma, but we wanted to meet so we could really work with another restaurant and help them out. So make sure that they didn't have to wait until September. So here it is. Okay, there it is. So there it is. Take a look at the method of operation, the hours of operation. So it's not open all that late. It's a restaurant. There's background music only. Low pre-recorded background music, guys. It's been around here for a long time. This is a renewal. Hi, Michelle. So that's where we're at. And does anyone have any questions?
You mentioned 898 Amsterdam. This is showing 483 Columbus. So
It is 483 Columbus.
483 Columbus, and I crapped it up. Sorry.
no problem.
We have the owner, Mr. Kessler.
Mr. Kessler, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Hey everyone, Max Bookman. I'm Josh Kessler's attorney. I wasn't sure if we were doing the renewal or we were doing the new application for 483 Columbus first.
I'm sorry, so I got this confused. So this is a new application for.
Okay.
You got it. Okay.
Very good. Let me take it away then. And thank you very much. Good evening, CB7. My name is Max Bookman. I am an attorney. It's nice to see everyone. With me is Josh Kessler. He is the applicant for your application tonight, and thank you for hearing us in August. So the application is for 483 Columbus Avenue, and that's a current existing restaurant with an alcohol license. It's called Bellini. It's on Columbus between 83rd and 84th, very small space. and Josh is looking to take it over and do a new restaurant there. So a little bit about Josh. He is an experienced restaurateur. He has he's the owner of a kosher restaurant over on the east side in the 40s on 46th Street that he's owned for a number of years now. It's called Barnea Bistro, sort of standard kosher restaurant with reasonable closing hours that's garnered a great deal of acclaim. And he's looking to do something new. He's not sure yet whether this restaurant's going to be kosher or not. He's leaning towards not kosher, but the food concept he's very clear on, and that's going to be small plate, tapa style food. The restaurant's going to be called Bonito. And as was shown on the application that he submitted, very reasonable, restaurant method of operation. We're talking about 35 to 45 seats, reasonable closing hours for your neighborhood, recorded background music only. Bellini does have a licensed sidewalk cafe, and so we are also going to have a licensed sidewalk cafe once sidewalk.
Yeah.
Once the city is doing sidewalk cafes again and the temporary COVID stuff is over. And so we're both here, and we're happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Great. What is the name of your restaurant again on 46th Street?
It's called Barnea Oh, sorry. It's called, you can answer, but it is Barnea Bistro.
Barnea Bistro. Okay.
Yeah.
I think method of operation looks well. Anybody have any questions from the committee?
Can you repeat the hours of operation?
It's on the application.
Yeah, let me show it again. Hold on.
Not on screen now.
Yeah, it's 12 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then on weekends, Friday and Saturday, 1 a.m.
That is obviously when we go back to being to real life, because
Right.
now, right? Yeah.
I mean, I was watching the SLA full board meeting today where they were unsuspending some licenses that were suspended, and what they would do for any license that's been suspended, if they're unsuspending them, they're requiring them to close for delivery, takeout, anything at 11. And obviously those are the city rules as well now as well. So anything that we're talking about tonight is of course subject to when all this craziness ends.
Yeah.
Okay, Shelley, you want to talk?
Shelley, you had a question?
I want to say that I'm familiar with Bonaire personally, been there, it's well run and good neighbor and everything else. So that's just a.
Thank you, Sheldon. I appreciate it.
Well, is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? I'm sorry.
Well, they will have to raise their hands if they want to talk.
While you're waiting for the public, I could just say, by the way, Mr. Bookman, Max, I am in great respect for what you've been doing for the industry, and the Hospitality Alliance. I've seen you testify, and I just kudos to you for all of your work.
Thank you. The Hospitality Alliance has really been instrumental. Andrew Ridgey, who everybody knows, has been, I think this is the first time he's been able to take a few days off actually in God knows how when, and he really deserves it because he's been nonstop. So thank you.
I just wanted to say, and again, this is not a requirement, but I see Josh Kessler's name and type, but is there any reason he doesn't want to show his punim on camera?
There's no reason why not. I just got to figure out how to do this. Hold on a second.
It's not necessary. It's not, I'm just.
There I am. I'm here.
There you go.
He's actually working. He's working. That's why he's in the back of his other restaurant.
I am here. I'm well. Oh,
Hi there.
I don't know what happened there. Now I lost you all.
Okay, well,
Okay, let's call the question.
I think
Oh,
we
hang on one second. Did I tried to unmute the folks who were attendees just in case they wanted to say something. So I see Donna Vitalone were you asking to comment?
No, I don't have any comments right now. I was interested in learning a little more about some of the things that were going on with hotels being used.
that's a discussion that we're going to continue a little bit later. So we're going to move this on. We have 2 items after this in new business, and I love your input. And I think everybody has a lot of opinions, and there's a lot going on in our neighborhood. We have 2 things. But first, let's vote on this, folks. So all in favor? You can raise your hands. Raise your hands,
If you can raise your hands on the participants area, please. The committee members first.
Okay.
Paul, if you're hearing me, vote on the chat, please.
Okay. Why am I not getting my full?
Linda, you're a co-host, so you cannot raise your hands. Your virtual hand.
Oh, you made me a comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3. Linda's 4 and 5. Josh is 6.
Yeah.
Paul, if you vote on the chat, please. So for now, the vote will be 6-0-0-0 committee members. So if you lower your hand now. So non-committee members, all those in favor, raise your hand, please. So I have Robert, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 with Doc. Mark is 8, Susan is 9, Shell is 10. Anybody else? So that's 10.
I raised my hand virtually.
Oh, I
you
see.
can see it. Yeah.
Yes. Well, let me start that count again. Hold on. Hold your hands up. Say 6, 7 with Mark, Doc's 8, Susan 9, Shelly 10. Okay. Anybody against? Abstaining? Oh, actually, I didn't count. Stephen was 11. Okay. So the non-committee member vote was 11-0-0-0.
Jerry, you got my yes vote.
Yes,
correct?
I did. Yes, I did.
Oh, okay. Oh,
So-
I didn't see it come up. Okay.
Yeah.
And Mr. Bookman, thank you. Mazel tov.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Have a
Thank
good
you all very much.
evening, and thank you, and stay safe and well.
Take
Thank
care,
you. You as
everybody.
well. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're welcome to stay on. The next discussion actually might be interesting for you. We're going to talk about the sweat law that's being resurrected by our state assemblywoman, Linda Rosenthal, and we find this from the perspective of the restaurants really egregious, especially, it's always been egregious. It was passed in the state assembly at last January, or was it December? And the state senate, and then it was vetoed by the governor, and so now they're trying to push it through. I'm going to give this over to Christian, who will explain it to you in more detail than I. But if you don't know what it is, it's
Well, the Leon law, in part, is they are requiring if any employee files a claim that his wages have not been paid, that he's owed wages. With the lien law, they can put a lien on the business property and also on the owner's property for the amount of the claim. Now, part of the reason why we don't believe this is it ought to be done this way is that if once that's done, if the business needs to do any kind of transactions to be able, let's say, to survive, they may not be able to. They may not be able to because of the lien, and that's why we think or at least some of us are against it. Now, having said that, the part of the reason this came about was that because of those restaurants that had disputes with their employees, and they will close the restaurant, they wouldn't pay the employees, and they will reopen under a different name, a different corporate entity, and the employees will lock out. So this is partly an attempt to avoid that, but the way it's written right now, it just goes too far, and I think it will have a negative impact on restaurants.
Josh, you want to weigh in here and talk about it from the perspective of a restaurateur, an owner?
I mean, I've said before, I think it's ridiculous. I think she's crazy to suggest this. It's unreasonable. I don't know what more there is to say about it. I think Christian said everything that needs to be said. It's just nuts.
I was going to write a letter. That was the discussion, and we wanted to know if everybody was on board with that. Doug, you're dealing with this firsthand. I mean, with your clients.
Well, so what many restaurant owners have said to me, and I think rightly so, is that this law goes too far because it lacks, it's basically really, the lien is placed just for a claim being made, not after it's being completely adjudicated.
Right.
And the problem is that there are a lot of bad actors. And Donna, can we get everybody to mute who's not talking? I think, okay, thank you. So, so the issue is that there are people that would take advantage of this and could use the employees. And I'm, you know, nobody wants to see any employees mistreated or underpaid or ripped off. That's not what this is about. The issue is, will people use this as undue leverage to almost, for lack of a better term, extort an owner into, you know, putting a lien on someone's personal assets and homes when otherwise they have some protection through a corporate veil, and force someone's hand. And so I know many restaurant owners and bar owners who've said if this law passes, they'll shut down and they're not going to come back to the city. That's someone else's quote. That's not mine. So,
but it also goes after, the most important thing, it goes after the personal asset of the owner, sometimes the managers, even the investors. So what it does is put a damper on anybody who wants to participate in this current environment. And we're going to be dealing with this through 2022, hopefully no later. Restaurants are already at risk. And we've seen, I mean, Barbara and I have a restaurateur we know very well. Even before the law was passed, he had, they fired a bartender and he went after him just before the law, saying that they were going to go after, he was going to try and go after their personal assets. Barbara, you're raising your hand.
Yes, I just want some clarification on why this is coming up again. This failed the first time around because the governor failed to sign the bill. Thankfully, even, you know, we all worked very, very hard. I, as the director of the bid at that time, and certainly Andrew Ridgey, and we did a lot of work on this together. But it failed, and now I don't understand why we're talking about it now. Is she bringing it up again?
You could, if I may, Linda, you could technically say that that it actually passed, but the governor vetoed it. Yeah. They resubmitted it, and it has already passed the Senate, and it's awaiting a vote on the Assembly.
So it may pass again, and that means the governor's got to veto it again. But it's a really wrong-headed bill.
It is horrible. This is a very, very dangerous bill.
Has it been redrafted at all? Have there been any changes made that?
If you want, I can put it up, but you know, it looks that most of the original premises are still there. They didn't change any of the main points.
I mean, the intent behind protecting employees, you know, from the legal wranglings and someone, you know, opening up, just, you know, dissolving one corporation and then not having liability. We don't want to condone that, but we also don't want to.
Right, but they should have addressed that directly, which they actually did not.
It's sort of curious to me that the bill was vetoed, and rather than try to override the veto, which is the correct procedure in the legislature, that they instead just resubmitted the bill, if I'm understanding you correctly. Is that what's going on?
Yep.
Wow.
But, you know, 8 days later.
That is unbelievable.
No softening of language, no clarification, no change.
Not to the parts that are important. It still says that they would put the lien on the property and the personal assets also.
So what we could do is send everybody a link so you have it.
Well,
but what we're talking about is, I see your hand. What we're talking about is a letter coming from the Business and Consumer Issues Committee of Community Board 7, saying that we are very much against it. If we are very much against it, which is why we're having this discussion. If this committee agrees that we all collectively think it's a bad idea and punitive, and at a time that's really bad for restaurants, that we will go ahead and draft a letter and we will send it to our committee to review.
I kind of wish Max Bookman was still online if he felt like opining on it. But
Okay, I just put the link on the
Thank
on
you.
the chat.
Okay, I see Robert S.
We have to
Pierce.
be a little careful about a letter that looks like it's coming from CB7. If it's just a letter from the committee, we might there might be a way to deal with that.
It will be coming from the committee, Mark.
Yeah, let's work toward that end. Yeah.
Absolutely. And everybody will have a chance to review. And as always, what we do on this committee is everybody participates and we do it in tandem. Everybody we incorporate everyone's edits, and we will send it to you, of course, as we always do. But the language will be coming from the Business and Consumer Issues Committee.
Okay, Robert, and then Michelle after.
Yeah, this is an alarming letter, kind of draconian, but I really think it's a shot before the bow, and it's a warning in these difficult times, and it's a warning to unscrupulous restaurant owners and the abuse of employees. And if we consider the history of restaurant workers over the years, you have to take into account that these scenarios are very real possibilities. I don't think that we're going to see a case where a restaurant's owner is a Southampton home is going to be attached. It's going to be lean. But this is, it's interesting that during the banking crises in 08 and 07, GOA did the same thing with the banks. This is, we know you're going to do this, and this is what we're going to do. Of course, the banks always prevail, but it's the same concept, I think, and it's a preventive measure that take us seriously. And we're very happy to hear that you have the community support and that you have no intentions of abusing your employees, but we know you.
You know what, Robert, here's the thing. I don't agree with you, and I'm going to speak up because I don't think it's a preventive measure. I think it's punitive. And not only that, most restaurants today have digital time clocks. It's very difficult to rip off an employee as it was very much, not saying that there aren't bad actors, there are, but it's much harder to do that. But what it does, it says you're guilty before proven innocent.
Well, it's punitive if
Punitive.
enacted. It's just a warning. It's just a warning in the meantime.
No, it's not. If they pass this law, it's not a warning.
Well, yeah, so it's a deterrent. We can play with the word, but it's a deterrent. Don't you dare do this.
Yeah, but don't.
I will be in the house.
Go ahead, Josh.
Robert, it's a claim. It can be a claim against.
Opinion. I think next we have who else wanted to speak? I think Michelle wanted to speak. Then I see David Honor and hi David and Peter Arnston. Okay.
Yeah, I cede my time to Josh. He was
thank you. I just wanted to say, Robert, that this could be a claim against. It's when there's a claim, not even the case hasn't been brought. It's just a claim, and it could be against a manager, not even an owner, a manager. It's egregious. It's way over.
It's also you can put a lien on personal property, like if you own a condo or whatever you own, you can put a lien on anything.
But I think Josh
just outrageous.
If what George is saying, I'm going to have a look at the law just for my interest. I'm supporting the committee and its position. But I think if you're talking about the manager,
can be.
No. But I'm just making the point that
I understand your point.
The deterrence factor, and but I agree with the committee's outrage, and that the committee should send a nice letter.
They'll all get a
Not
link.
so nice, but a letter.
Okay. Who else wanted to speak? Peter and then David. How's that? Peter, what's going on?
I put my notes into chat, but basically, I don't think this is well written. I'm very concerned about small businesses that don't have lots of lawyers or have a lawyer on staff that's competent, and they're the ones that are going to get hurt. That's my biggest concern is that the larger restaurants that have lawyers will figure out a way to deal with it to a degree. But the smaller ones, they have no chance whatsoever.
Yeah.
And that's an issue for me.
Thank you, Peter. David,
How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Nice to see everybody. And on a side note, thank you all very much for your support. I wasn't on this I didn't know about this part, but this obviously affects me as well. It's a dangerous bill. And what the gentleman just said is correct. Small restaurants suffer from this because we don't have human resources department. We don't have lawyers. You know, I can't call a lawyer on a regular basis. The problem is there are some very bad restaurant owners out there, and they probably have ruined it for everybody else. You know, if we're talking about a bill, what I would like to see passed is if an employee, see what's happened in the past is an employee can sue you and then you have to defend yourself. So even if you win the case, you spend thousands and thousands of dollars defending yourself. So what happens, a lot of restaurant owners actually settle, even though they're doing nothing wrong, only to make it because it will cost them less money. So I would actually like to see a bill that if an employee sues you and they lose the case, they pay your legal fees. And I guarantee there won't be as many. If you're going to be punitive to the owner, you got to be punitive to the employee who's taking advantage of something. So I'm guessing this would never happen, but to me, it would level the field, and it would save many restaurants a lot of heartache to say, like, if you're bringing a false case and you lose, you're going to end up paying the fees. So it's a very, very dangerous bill. But unfortunately, there are bad. I'm not going to say restaurant, but bad business owners in general. And that goes with any business. And this bill, it's, you know, owning a small business, you can't be, you're supposed to be, you're innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until you're proven innocent. It's very dangerous.
I see Doug's hand is raised. Michelle, was your hand raised too? Oh, okay.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
I mean, I just to further David's point and to others here, I have no problem punishing bad actors. And look, with the way this is written, that's just the concern. I would, again, this is an oversimplification, and I'm not an attorney, but I would be delighted with a bill that eventually would put a lien on an owner who has egregiously offended and broken laws by not paying their employees, and it was proven in court, and then possibly there would be some liability, personal liability that may pierce the corporate veil, but not until such time that it was proven. And if you're going to walk away from your liabilities, especially with regard to wages, which is a major no-no, I'd be okay with that. But just because, you know, people have to be innocent until they're proven guilty. And the fact is that there are a lot of litigious employees, and there are many, many more employees than there are owners. And it's not as much the employees, but many of the attorneys, and again, I'm not trying to expert attorneys, but there are a lot of attorneys that go after restaurants. They go, here's what you're going to do. And they push a settlement. It happens all the time. It happens with ADA cases, and I've seen it with my own eyes. And it's not fair, and it has to be rewritten. I'd be in support of something that was rewritten, but I don't know why it hasn't been.
Okay, maybe Doug, I'll tell you what we're going to do. If everybody on our committee is in agreement that we can draft a letter from Business and Consumer Issues, we got an II here, then Doug, why don't you and Christian and I work on the letter and the language, and then everybody we'll do that. I'll get this going next week, okay?
Yeah. Paul, if I'm reading your Paul, I'm reading your phones. You want to make a comment? Yeah, okay, I guess not. Okay, so
let me move to the next. Should we move to the next one, Christian?
Yep.
Okay, so the next one, I think, is why everybody's here.
Hold on, Barbara, you have a question?
You're muted, Barbara. Unmute yourself. You're still muted.
Well, when you figure it when you figure it out, you know, we'll let you talk.
You're still muted, Barbara. So when
Oh, there you go.
Okay, sorry, I only have my iPad here, it just would not unmute. I apologize for that. I wanted to ask if Andrew Ridgey has factored in on this, because I really don't think that CB7 should move forward until we get his input. He was so actively involved before.
I spoke to Andrew today. We texted each other, and he was apologetic. He doesn't have any bandwidth.
I know.
So he said, go for it, and then we would all discuss it later. Yeah, he's very vested in this.
Actually, he's the one that brought it to our attention.
Yeah.
For us to discuss.
Okay. So we're there, and I know Andrew he could have been really eloquent about this, but he's taking a much needed break. So we're all here. I think most of the folks are here tonight about the issues with 688 folks, residents moving into our neighborhood. All single men and women, no families, and they've wreaked havoc. Again, this is a BCI committee, so they've wreaked havoc on our local stores. They're wreaking a lot of people, not everyone, but there are several people who. There was an OD yesterday in front of DSW, another one in front of the Lucerne. That seems to be the most difficult one, but the Belle Claire, we've got those issues too. But primarily the Lucerne is the one that's affecting our restaurants the most, because we're getting reports of aggressive panhandlers, which obviously is discouraging diners on the street. And so we've got some issues, and it's not, you know, it's not that we are a community that doesn't want to support those less fortunate, okay, or people who are truly, but we've got a whole bunch of drug addicts, primarily 283 at the Lucerne, and we've got a whole slew of drug dealers. I watched a drug deal go down on Saturday, on Broadway in 79. So we've got some issues. So I think, again, we're going to write a letter. There's no point in a resolution at this stage, because the whole full board would have to vote on it. But again, we'll be writing a letter, and everybody's input is critical. So I'm going to start the dialogue rolling here. So raise your hand. Madeline, raising your hand.
Hold on a second, Linda. Yeah. I wonder if it might be useful to have Mark give us a summary of the meeting that we had the other day with the Board of President's office and DHS and some of those other people.
Sure, glad to do that. And while a letter that comes only from a committee with respect to a proposed legislation is something we can talk about, this is an issue where I think that to the extent that the Community Board 7 speaks at all, it needs to speak with one voice, and we're not in a position to do that right now. There are obviously concerns, and they should be addressed. Let me answer Christian's question. As soon as we learned about this, which was after it was a done deal, as I think everybody knows, we set to work trying to address the issues as they came up.
We're losing you, Mark.
I'm sorry, say again?
We lost you there for a moment.
Oh, okay. I didn't lose you, so so thanks for letting me know. Okay, so several of us, including including me, have been spending an awful lot of time trying to make headway with the service providers, with the elected officials, with block associations, a whole panoply of folks who are trying to respond to this. And with the service providers, we've been engaging both with their security folks as well as their programming folks, trying to make sure, for example, that there are things for the residents, the shelter clients to do. One of the things that has been emerging is that while there are absolutely incidents of aggressive behavior, and there have been overdoses, there was one in a tree pit in front of my own apartment building, so this is not rumor, this is fact. it is not always possible to trace the people who were involved in these actions back to the hotels or back to the shelter clients. We've been working with the NYPD to try to enlist their help, especially with respect to things like drug dealing. And some of the answers are not the answers that you'd want to hear. The NYPD, there is private security that is contracted by the service providers at the hotels. The private security are not peace officers. They're certainly not police officers. They cannot make arrests.
And they refuse to do anything. That's a discussion I've had with the reporter. Yes.
The police are severely limited in what they can do as well. Essentially, if they don't see a drug deal with evidence right in front of them, there's nothing they can do either. And I mean, like, seeing it across the street is not good enough. Certainly, people. I mean, I've witnessed what I believe to be drug deals too. So I'm not questioning whether that's actually happening. I'm simply saying that this is what is the challenge we face. And the police are diminished in their ranks, both because their budgets have been cut and because they have a number of other challenges that they are prioritizing. And so working with them to try to expand the perimeter of whatever it is that the private security will reach has been a challenge for sure. So there was a meeting last Thursday, which was the first time that many of us got to speak, and the co-chairs of HHS and BCI were on that. Thank you, as well as a couple of our other colleagues who were invited in their other capacities in the community, not necessarily because they were CB7 members, with a wide number of constituents involved and several electeds showing up in person and their staffs, as well as other staffs. And DHS was there, as well as the service providers. DHS started to answer some questions and work with folks. Some of the things I've just been telling you were things that emerged from that meeting. They agreed, as long as we don't call it a community advisory board, they agreed to have an ongoing working group with members of the community. I am working with April from Gail Brewer's office and also Helen's office and other offices to try to get that next meeting set up. We were hoping that it could come together this week. I'm not so sure that's going to happen now, but we're pushing as hard as we can for that. Meanwhile, I shared with you all many of the things that I'm saying now as CB7 members over the weekend, and I'm contemplating two things. One is contemplating a communication by email, using our email blast to the wider community to try to share some of these things as well. Not because this is going to be the information that everybody wants to hear, but because we should be sharing it. And then in part because, and then the question is whether I hold or we hold a specific meeting about this with the community at large. And while on the one hand, I don't want anybody tagging CB7 to say that we are the authors of any of these discussions or decisions, it is important that as accurate information as possible is conveyed. There are incidents of aggressive behavior, for example, that have been happening in our district, but that we don't have any reason to believe happened with respect to shelter clients. There was a horrible stabbing, I don't know if you saw the video, at the 72nd Street subway station, where a person emerged from the subway with a very long knife and without warning or provocation, took after a person buying a Metro card. It was bone chilling, and I've been a New Yorker for 40 plus 50, whatever it is, years, and that's as scary as it gets. That person had nothing to do with any of the shelters. He wasn't coming here to visit a shelter. He wasn't a resident in a shelter. As far as I know, he wasn't a resident in a shelter anywhere else either. There have been some incidents of aggressive behavior in our restaurants. And you're right to be concerned about that. Aggressive panhandling. Panhandling almost isn't the right word because it sounds nice, and this is accosting people in a very challenging way. Again, it is difficult, if not impossible, to determine whether any of them are shelter clients or not.
One of the only people who's directly in front of Lucerne. We know if there's a shelter person. I'm
Well,
sorry. Yeah.
well, and it is also the case that there are populations, and I've been criticized for using this word, but I'll try it again just in case, that prey upon the shelter clients. So, for example, we've had documented overdoses. We know that the drugs are illegal and that they weren't provided by the shelter, so they got here somehow. And so there are people who are preying upon vulnerable populations in that way, and that is destabilizing not just for the shelter clients, but for the community around. Or you could say that sentence either way. You could also say it's destabilizing both for the community surrounding and for the shelter clients too. To the extent that they are attempting recovery, that is something that we should be supportive of. There's a beginning of a discussion in that meeting that Christian and Linda were referring to about a good neighbor policy and the expectations of the shelter clients and their behavior. It was a surprise to me that continuing an active use of illegal drugs is not a violation of the good neighbor policy such that it would cause them to lose their rights to shelter or even their rights to use shelter in these hotels. I'm not defending that decision, I'm simply reporting it. One of the things that we were given to understand in the early going was that because these hotels, let's face it, they're much nicer properties to live in than some of the places that these folks are used to in terms of shelter. It would be a lever to say that they needed to behave in a way that we would hope for our community. But it is emerging that active drug use, for example, is not a disqualifying event with respect to the shelters. I'm sorry, with respect to these hotels as shelters. So I think that we ought to hold a meeting, even though I am wary of doing so. And the reason is that we're not the author of these decisions. I'm not confident that DHS would show up to a general community meeting where an awful lot of the angriest voices will be heard. I think it's important that angry voices be heard the same way I think it's important that compassionate voices be heard. I have yet to hear a consensus emerge through all the communications I've received, and believe you me when I tell you that I've received, probably a half dozen to a dozen emails every single day. I've been doing my best to respond to them because I think people want to be acknowledged. I think that their concerns should be addressed, even though I don't have a lot of hopeful information for them about that. It is absolutely the case that these hotels are near schools and they are near residential neighbors.
Registered offenders, a block away from PS 87.
And I got to tell you that the lawyer-like answer that was given that that only the registered sex offenders who are allowed to be near there are near there, that's not the answer that the community wants to hear.
Mark, what you said was that there was only one residentially restricted sex offender, that there are different, this was Aaron Drinkwater, Deputy Commissioner of DHS. And she said, so she didn't, what she said was there was only one residentially restricted sex offender. The others were okay, a block from a school.
Well, now they know there's 6.
Registered, that's okay.
Well,
Mel,
going all over
I met with the police today.
Okay, I think we should let Mark finish before, without interrupting, please.
That's okay. That's okay. You can hear the conflict in my voice too, because I want to be compassionate and I want to be appropriate, but I also want to have the right answer for our community. And it doesn't appear as though anyone is owning the predictable collateral consequences of these actions. At the same time, it is appropriate that we be compassionate to the people who are being put in our community. I don't have a good answer for you. I am trying to do my best to make this better, but better is not the same thing as the problem going away. So yeah, I'm making a meal of this. There are 2 more points I want to make. One is that I do think we need to hold a meeting, even if it's a highly organized meeting, so that folks feel as though they have an opportunity to be heard on this in some sense, even though I don't know that there's anything we can do with that information. I think it's still important for us to hear firsthand as much as we can. I mean, this meeting could go on for 18 hours, so I'm not going to agree to that. And we're going to hear things that are going to be hard to hear. But I still think that there's. I also think that if we don't hold such a meeting, then come September 1st with our next full board meeting, we're going to hear it anyway, and then we will be dealing both with the issue of whatever folks are saying and the fact that they feel aggrieved by the fact that we didn't give them an opportunity to speak before that. The last thing I want to say is that these are all very, very difficult issues. It has become known to me because I live near one of the hotels, so I walk by there with some frequency. By no means is this a black and white issue, but there are a significant number of people of color who are the clients that are being housed in these hotels. Our board has been searching for answers with respect to the inequity of resources in our system, system-wide. And it's found, we're still working on the best possible way to express that. I don't want to lose the reality that there are, that same conversation could have some impact here, that we need to be mindful, I think, I need to be mindful of the population that is being discussed and how the nature of their situations warrants are taking into account inequities in the system wide about the availability of resources, the availability of treatment, the availability of healthcare in general. And I guess I'll end with that. This is an enormously difficult situation. Those are my thoughts on it, as well as I hope a fair summary of that meeting, which ranged all the way from this doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood, all the way to we need to be better neighbors ourselves. So I hope that's an answer to your question. And of course, I'm here.
Thank you, Mark.
Wanted to speak?
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay, kiddo.
Okay. And forgive me, I'm very upset right now. I spoke about this weeks ago. More so, I spoke about the restaurants opening up in the street, that this will happen. I warned against this. And now I'm emotionally upset. Now, when you bring up the fact that it's mostly minorities, we know that. What are we gonna do about that? Not look at them like they're criminals. Drug dealers have no jobs. Where are they going? Homeless people don't want to go in a shelter because of coronavirus. There are all sorts of issues that these people are going through. And now that they're going through it, I warned you guys weeks ago. You should have thought about finding a solution. I'm angry. I'm so angry that Black people are being perpetrated as these criminals, these crazy people, these drug addicts. Don't you think they have problems? I am so upset hearing you, Mark. I am so upset. And I understand that you don't mean it in the way that I hear it, but I'm hearing it because I warned you guys a few weeks ago. I am so upset. Black people in this country, that's why this election is so important, that you hear us, you see us, you pay attention to us, you help us, we help each other. Don't come back and say, oh, now they're out there dealing drugs, or this one died in front of this place, or that whatever they do. I warned you guys weeks ago. We should have been speaking more about that then. I thought it was been an outside restaurant. Now it's all over. You guys didn't listen to me. Please listen to me for once, or listen to a Black person who knows what they're talking about. We know what we're talking about. We know what we need. They're not out here doing it intentionally. They have no means to live a better life. I live in public housing and I hate it. But this is all I can afford. And I do the best I can and help others out. So I don't want to hear about there's more crime. I warned you guys weeks ago. And I'm done.
Shelley?
Unmute yourself, Shelley. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to provide you with some information first, because I had somewhat of an intimate gathering with the commander of Manhattan North, who many of us knew from the 24th, Kathy O'Reilly, Captain Zuber from the 20th, and Detective Yaguchi, who's new at the 24th. And the first bit of surprise information is that the Lucerne's contract ends in October. And the commander said that it will not be renewed definitively. Okay, it would have to be renewed then. And she said she knows that it will not be renewed. Okay, that's one thing. The second thing, the police hands are tied for any quality of life issues in our community. Okay, a lot of things were negated as things that were considered crimes, and other things are not honored by the Manhattan DA. They will not prosecute any quality of life crimes, so that the police have to walk tiptoed, tiptoe around a lot of things. What the police feel that they're being victimized as maybe not doing enough. They said the homeless services are responsible for most of the reaction to things that are going on. What people are not aware of, or may not be aware of, is that the majority of residents, temporary residents now, or the people who are brought from the shelters, go out in the morning and come back in the evening. Most are not hanging around during the day, and they're not required to. The police come around at key times of the day, specifically to the shelters, when people are leaving and when people are coming back, where there are concentration of people and where there could be arguments and could be issues between the people who are now residing in the hotels. The drug dealers weren't confused when they left the shelters downtown. They knew where they were going, and either they came to meet them, or some of the people who are not fully recovered are going back to their suppliers. So that's the normal course of business. And the only answer to what's going on, from what I can see, is that people have to start distinguishing between crimes and discomfort. Crimes are when people are assaulted verbally or physically. Crimes are when things are done that are illegal. So, although it's a very difficult situation for most people, I think people have to be aware that none of the hotels are going to be emptied except for one possibly in October, and that this is a longer term situation. The people who were there did not ask to go there. They did not request to go there. They were shipped and warehoused there. What we can do, both on behalf of the community and behalf of the people who are living there, is to report to the precinct 911 anything we see that we think is very inappropriate or criminal. The police then go to the service providers, Project Renewal, Help USA, and they discuss it and try to get it corrected. The pictures that go to elected officials are wonderful, but they're not going to act on it. The police are going to act on it. So if people are concerned about issues, they should bring it up with their elected officials and question why there was no process with the community, and that the services hardly can be provided properly to 283 people at the Lucerne, 288 people at the Belclaire, but that's not the residents' fault. It's just very poor planning on Health and Human Services. Health and Human Services have never, I shouldn't say never, almost never will come to a community meeting. So that's a waste. But if we're going to have a community meeting, I think that we can have the 2 precincts and Manhattan North commander come and speak. We can have the service providers come and speak. We can have elected officials come and speak and respond to questions. I think it's important that the community board has some type of forum before September comes, because people expect it. They're not going to be invited to Gail's limited meeting. They feel they must be heard, and the only venue that they've accustomed to is the community board. But I think we have to be mindful of the fact that although there are very uncomfortable things and offensive things and criminal things going on, that the situation was set up for failure and concentrated in a small area to make it even worse. The last thing I want to say is there are 2 issues here, 2 major issues. There are street homeless, which we've had for a long time, and the numbers have increased. And then there's the shelter people. And to distinguish who's doing what is very difficult for most people. There's also the 3rd group, and that's the ordinary person who's doing something wrong. So one person I know complained about they were assaulted verbally by someone on the street, and very abusively and harmfully and hatefully. And I asked, who was it? They said, well, it could have been a shelter person. It could have been one of the encampment people. I said, and it could be someone else. So we can't make assumptions about people because of what they do. But we can use, the only avenue we have is to report things that we find and expect that the police will work with the service providers and with the elected officials. Having a working group that Mark mentioned, I think is a wonderful idea. So it's not a community advisory board. I think it's necessary to get updated information, because the only updated information we seem to get is from the newspaper and from online things. And I'm not saying they're not valid, but certainly they're going to be skewed in the negative. So, well, I said a lot, but I think we have to be mindful of the broader situation, who's responsible for it. And it's not the homeless people who are brought up from other shelters who are responsible for the fact that they're there and the fact that they can't get their services properly in this highly concentrated, overloaded hotel situation.
Thank you, Shelby. I saw that.
Don McCowan has his hand up.
Oh, Doug McCown, yeah.
I just wanted to point to Shelley's point that the individuals didn't ask to go to these hotels. Rather, it's pretty clear at this point that the hotels accepted for business reasons to accept the program into the community. I think there was an article, newspaper article about it published today, where one of the individual owners noted that he had an opinion and was part of the discussion. With that in mind, and that it's clear that there's data related to incidents, all publicly available on the BoardStat tool. In my mind, it's clear that there's a community concern as well associated with this. I think we all agree. Would a letter as a way to begin the conversation outside of a public meeting, would a letter from BCI, who has the responsibility to mediate in the charter, would that be a beginning mechanism or a way to begin the conversation to put us on record on how we feel about the activity? Or is it not a worthwhile?
Let me jump in there, because committees don't generally write letters, the board does. And generally speaking, positions in letters are an amplification or restatement of positions taken by the full board. Right now, the full board has not taken any position at all. And I'm not certain that there's a consensus in any particular direction. A letter that asks for information is something that anybody can do. But a letter that states a position is something that needs to be based on something that the full board has done. I will try to.
Mark, let me just interject because Steve Brown has his hand up.
Yeah, please.
It has to do with the discussion that he and I had earlier. And I had suggested that HHS and YEL, because they deal with families and it was, pertinent to them, that they write a letter, because BCI's focus had to do with the local businesses that are so challenged right now. That's why I suggested other committees, but I think, and also because we don't have a meeting this month. This was the BCI meeting that had been called as an emergency in order to address an application. And then we discussed this. But I'm going to call on Steve Brown now because I know that you wanted to discuss this too.
Yeah, well, I'll be kind of straightforward and simple in hopes of anticipation of a further meeting. And to Linda's point, at YEL, I was talking to a couple committee members and other, other board members about possibly having a YEL with concerns specifically about youth concern. The issues would be to the committee, around the pedophiles, around walking in certain areas, around youth. But I'm not sure if Mark had made a final decision, but we've had some dialogue and I would acquiesce if we had a broader meeting. So I'm going to formally request and/or support that meeting. And if that does so, then I think it would be much more impactful on that level. And then my comments are, I think Shelley and Doug and the other comments, or I'm not going to be repetitive, so I will just make a different comment. And I think the challenge that I see with government, in particular DHS, is their methodology and way they do things. And it's become clear to me that that DHS, I believe, looks at things in a capacity issue, but not a community appropriate issue. And we've seen it ravage a very successful women's shelter on the Upper West Side. And it was probably because some algorithm came forward that sort of made sense to do this. And as we listen to the government, we listen to the mayor's office talk about community involvement, as we try and turn policing into community involvement, I don't understand why DHS can't be talking about community involvement. This was not set up for success, as Shelley said. I don't think it's fair to the men in there. And some of them I'm empathetic and some of them, candidly, I'm not as empathetic. But the bottom line is as someone that has some experience with addiction in my family and in my life, it doesn't make sense to I would not want to put a family member who went to a place near in an area that had many liquor stores, that it's just not the proper place. There are many places in the boroughs that I think would be more appropriate. So I'll just leave it at that. But I think that we should be communicating to DHS that the Upper West Side welcomes people that need help, but we want them appropriate. A family shelter in that area would be so much more appropriate. Kids and mothers and other ones would be more appropriate. And we should be focusing on the dialogue of, let's get the appropriate people here. That particular group, and I'm very empathetic, would do better someplace else, and our community would be better. It's not an either or. People aren't demonized, and I'm super sympathetic to everyone. But let's get the right people. We are a welcoming community. but let's coordinate those efforts together. That's the message I think has to go out to DHS. If you want to continue to do this, then you need to work with us and get the right area. That would be a major theme of what I think should be going out to the community, to the people, and to New York City.
Well, thank you, Stephen. We're going to recognize now Doug Kleiman, and after that, Barbara Adler.
I've been giving this a lot of thought, as I think we all have. And on a personal note, I've been doing my very best to make real observations with my eyes and ears. I've been walking by all of the hotels regularly at different times of night and day. I've been monitoring a lot of the chatter on social media, some of which is credible, some of which is bogus. And I think there's an old expression that nothing changes until it becomes what it is. In other words, let's get the facts. And I think to Shelley's point, there's a lot of conflation here. I saw someone post a picture of Carl on 79th and Broadway, who we've all known for years. And, you know, they're putting that in the backdrop of the Lucerne. Well, Carl is not a Lucerne resident. He's been an issue. He's been a problem. God bless him. I wish him well, but they got that wrong. And they've got a lot of other things wrong. They got some things right. Yes, quality of life, super important. Crime, not going to be tolerant of it. And when I say crime, I'm talking about drug addiction, fornication, masturbation, drug sales, harassment, muggings, all that stuff. We got to get a handle on that, because that is what everybody's afraid of. But I do believe that many of the reports have been grossly exaggerated. I think there is a lot of NIMBY going on here, and there's a lot of white privilege going on here too. But I'm not saying that that's all what it is, because there's something really happening in our neighborhood, and it is happening every day. I've seen it. And so I'd like to know more about, you know, you follow the almighty dollar, whether the Lucerne's contract is going to be renewed or not. If I do the math roughly, these hotels are making about $1 million to $1.5 million a month in an environment where they were sucking wind because of COVID. They're empty. So I can't even fault the hotel owners for saying, yeah, I'll take that deal. They probably don't live in the neighborhood, but I understand why they did it. So I'm kind of all over the place here, but I'm committed, as we all are, to help these people compassionately. But you know, drug addiction and substance abuse is an extremely volatile, tragic thing, and it is probably the bubonic plague of our time, besides COVID. And people that are active drug users, some of them are violent. Not all of them are. And they can be very dangerous when they are in a numbed state. And we are seeing some of that. And we got to get a handle on it. I like to see what I spoke with Mark earlier. There are rules. What are the rules in the hotel if they're violating their curfew? And I'm shocked that sobriety, at least for some period of time, is not a condition of staying in these properties, because they're shelters. But no room to refine that a little bit. So in any case, and to Madeline's point, you know, this is obviously, we're getting a real vision here of a systemic problem, and now it's in our backyard and our front yard. So yes, there is a horrible, and I'll wrap this up because I'm taking too much time. I apologize, but I've just been giving it a lot of thought. We are now seeing it in our face. We haven't built enough affordable housing. We have not helped people with mental illness. That is a fault. It's such a complicated issue with federal funding, Medicaid, Medicare, you name it. And now we're seeing it. So maybe this is a great opportunity for us to really figure out ways we can systemically help people. It's not going to be overnight. But I continue to ruminate on this and meditate on this and pray on this. And I would love to be part of a solution without vilifying anyone in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, though. Barbara?
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody in our community who has not given this very, very serious thought. People have questions, concerns, people are upset, people are feel one way, people feel completely the opposite way about this. And it seems to me that Community Board 7 has just really failed this community in that it's our job to provide a forum for people to come together and to hear each other, to get some answers from some professional people who have something to say. And I don't understand why we haven't done that. There's been a few meetings that I've heard about. I was not invited to any of them. I don't understand why selected people were invited. And frankly, I don't think it makes sense to have this meeting now for a very selected group of people on BCI when everybody from CB7 and I can't tell you how many calls I have gotten from people who have questions and I can't answer them. I don't think any of us can really, but I think we absolutely have to have a meeting as soon as possible.
Can I jump in on that?
Okay, Mark, may I? One, the meeting was called by the borough president's office.
It doesn't matter, Linda. It doesn't matter who called the meeting. We should have called the meeting.
Okay. The meeting was called by the borough president's office specifically for the members of the 79th Street Block Association and the people who were immediately in the immediate area who were impacted. We were asked, the two co-chairs of BCI and the co-chairs of HHS were invited, period. It happened within 3 days of it because DHS wasn't available, one. The biggest issue here is not anybody dropping the ball, not Helen, this is not something that happens in a vacuum. This is DHS doing the same thing that DHS does. And I called the comptroller's office and they don't even have copies of the contracts. So they don't know, there are no RFPs in an emergency, so they don't even know who's getting paid how much, why they chose which groups to come here. Nobody consulted with the neighborhood. This would have been an ideal neighborhood for families that are out in the boonies in LaGuardia to be here and with access to parks for their kids, and it's not happening. So we were invited to one meeting. Mark was apprised of, Mark and Helen and were apprised of, that's it, who signed the check? Mark and Helen were apprised of the Belclair and people coming to Belclair 3 days before everybody was moved in. Nobody consulted. Hey, wouldn't this be a great place to have, like, especially the Lucerne, they have 2 and 3 bedroom suites. So, you know, and so it's a missed opportunity as Shelley was talking about, but I don't think anybody dropped the ball. It's DHS doing DHS covert things. They make the decisions, they don't consult.
And if I could just add on to that, please, because Barbara, I don't think we dropped a ball at all. If we held a meeting without having had our first meeting with DHS, we would be holding a meeting in an environment with a great deal of animus and no information to share. Only after we got to a point where my hope is that we have a second meeting with DHS before this meeting I'm trying to put together occurs. And I'm not certain who the right people are to bring to that meeting. I mean, I would love for it to be DHS, but I have no hope, as Shelley was saying, I have no hope that they'll engage on that level. It was all that the borough president could do to get DHS to come to the meeting that she was able to put together with the other electeds. There is, and there's also a need for having a little bit of experience so that we can, I mean, obviously the experience has been troubling, but there was a need for a need for a basis of information. We're now getting to a point where I think we have that. And if I was interpreted before as demonizing the shelter clients or demonizing the folks who are in need, I apologize for speaking badly because that was the last thing that I intended to do, while acknowledging that there are difficult circumstances to deal with and trying to make that better. That's what I've been trying to do. That's what the electeds have been trying to do. I communicated that once I had information to share with the full board, I did it. I will continue to work on that with you and with all of us. But one of the really realities is that DHS wouldn't come to a 50 board member meeting with all of us present. And so I expanded the list as far as I could based on being invited myself. and I think I did the right thing, but I'm happy to receive that criticism. But that's where we are, and now we're hopefully in a position to take the next step. And so working on this is a stepwise situation. I'll shut up now.
Okay, Natasha Kasmi.
Hi. I'm not going to repeat what has already been said about this being a very hyper-local manifestation of a systemic problem. I totally agree with that. What I will also echo is the fact that crimes are being committed, but they're not being dealt with. Shelley touched upon it. Others have touched upon it. But for instance, I don't understand why NYPD needs to have an officer right there while a drug deal is happening in order to make an arrest. You know, these are like really ridiculous issues, again, systemic, that are just hamstringing us even more in a very difficult situation. And I just want to, you know, there's been a lot said about writing letters or having meetings, but what are we doing as a community board in terms of action? And I don't really see any of that. For instance, I'd like to know more about the outreach that's being done with the business community. And I'm not just talking about the restaurants or the shops, but also like the halal cart guys, the newsstand guys. You know, what do they want? Are they getting organized at all or not? There were a couple of slides that were shared the other night at the board stat training, and they were specific to Community Board 7 and the homelessness problem. And they showed that the hotspots of a lot of the complaints that have been made to 311 are around Broadway, basically up and down Broadway. So I believe there was a Broadway task force. I was never part of it, but I would like to hear what they have to say about it. Is there like maybe some redirecting of their focus? So what is their insight into this? You know, it also seems that all these people congregate around scaffoldings. And I know that some scaffoldings are well lit, but I'm sure every scaffolding could be better lit. Why can't we mandate better lighting of the scaffolding while obviously not being in violation of anything that the city mandates for these scaffoldings? These scaffolding areas are being used as bedrooms, bathrooms, you know, for all sorts of criminal activities. And also another thing at the 79th Street Block Association meeting, Gail Brewer herself announced that DHS was supposed to provide us with at least 4 of its own police officers who have the authority to make arrests. But I don't know what happened to that. You know, that should be something to be followed up on, because they seem to be the only ones with the power to actually do something. You know, and also I think all these stores that sell alcohol, I don't know why the alcohol cannot be secured better, whether it's a Duane Reade, whether it's a liquor store. You know, that is something that we can do. Like if this is a temporary situation, then maybe we can, as a community board, mandate these things, you know, just for a temporary period of time. We have to start from somewhere. But I feel like right now all we're doing is talking about writing letters to people who may or may not listen to us. We may not get to the right people at all. And, you know, more and more time is passing. As September comes, more and more families are going to move back into the city. Schools are going to reopen. We're losing a lot of time in basically inaction. So that's, and oh, I also wanted to address the issue of NIMBYism. Somebody talked about it. And this is my backyard, but you know what? I've been having conversations with people who come into work in my backyard, like the woman who takes care of the 77th Street playground on Amsterdam. You should go talk to her about how she was harassed and literally chased out of the playground in tears by some man who came in to use the bathroom to just clean himself up from top to bottom. So this is not just about my backyard. It's also about like other people who are here working to take care of our children, make this community a safer, better place for all of us. So it's not just affecting people who live here. That was all I had to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Natasha. Anyone else that wants to be heard on this subject before we move on? Susan.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is obviously a fraught time for everybody. I often go back to the the exercise that we did at the Manhattan Borough President's office when I was being interviewed for the community board, which is the Alpine crash, and the demonstration where, you know, if you try to figure out what to do by yourself, you'll probably die. But if all of you work together, then you have a better chance of survival. I don't know if everyone did that when they applied. I'm a relatively newish member in the group here, but it seems to me that if we could all, sound sort of Pollyanna, but if we could all get together, as many people as possible, even if a lot of them are angry, and let everyone be heard, then we can perhaps all work together to make sure that we all have some input in this. And that's what I would hope for, is that we would have a meeting that that ideally the community board would take a leadership role on setting up. Even if Mark, I appreciate that we don't yet have all of the information and there is no consensus among the board members. There rarely is about what we should do. I mean, the same way we did with the Museum of Natural History. It wasn't our decision to do an expansion. The board was divided on whether or not that was a good idea, but still we held the meetings and we let people be heard. It's the part that upsets me that hasn't been talked about is a lot tonight is the frustration in the community that they're not being heard by the community board. And I would like to see that rectified as soon as we possibly could. I agree, Mark, that if we wait until the September meeting, it will be really bad, really, really bad. So I would urge us to have a meeting that's well advertised. I mean, tonight, if this had been on the agenda as something that's being discussed, I assure you, the attendance would have been different. I'm in Philadelphia right now. We've got a lot of family stuff going on, but this issue is really important. I feel so much for the restaurant owners and the business owners that this is like the thing they didn't need on top of all of it. And Madeline, you did raise this months ago, not weeks ago. And I think it really is a time to really, for the community board to step up and set up some sort of meeting. One final thought, it saddens me that we have a city agency that won't come to a meeting. I mean, what would we do if DOT wouldn't come to a meeting? It's just confusing to me, but that's okay. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susan. I'm going to call this issue closed now so that we can move on to one last issue at least. But before we close it, I would like to give the last word to Mark as to what the steps might be followed.
Thank you. The steps going forward are that I'm going to work with the chairs of the right committees, including this one and HHS and YEL, to try to set up a meeting that makes sense. It may just be us. It may just be the community board doing it. And that may not be the, I feel strongly that we should have an opportunity to hear from the public. Although I don't think holding that meeting this week or the week before would have been sensible or productive. I'm not certain that next week it'll be productive, but at this point, I think the consensus I'm hearing from this meeting is that we know about what we're gonna know, so now's the time. And if that's something that, well, anyway, so that's where I've been working toward, and I will continue to work toward that goal. It may, and if I can get either the service providers or the DHS to attend or the electeds to attend, then so much the better, because we'll have more sources of information. So I'll commit to working on that and try to have something available for as a final decision the next day or maybe two, with enough information going forward. The other, so that I think is our next step, and I don't think that there's any other next step that we can take at this point that would be consistent with how we're going to approach these things. I'm still called to try to answer the, well, no, I guess I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm still obviously conflicted about a number of things that have been said, but I'll try to deal with that in a more productive way than this. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. I think Susan's, everybody's, you know, we hear everyone's frustration. We have one more thing, because we're going to talk to David Honor, because he's a restaurateur who's dealing with a different issue about his seating. And I took some photos that we'll put up now, because we want to see Fred's open. I remember when Fred was just opening in the late 1990s with Larry Johnson and Fred. So his incredible golden retriever. So anyway, getting back to this whole thing, the reason why, Susan, to answer your question, this was a BCI special meeting specifically for a one-item agenda, and we had the other issues that we thought would be pertinent to would be pertinent to the restaurateurs. And we weren't going to have a meeting until September. So we wanted, and to answer your question, Natasha, so we thought a letter talking about how it was impacting the businesses, the retail and the restaurants would be as effective as we can be on again, an advisory group. It's a community board. We're not elected officials. Now we're looking at press.
If I could, just real quick, in the interest of open meetings, I think it would have been really useful to have it on the agenda with a better description of what it was going to be so that more people could have been involved. Because I think people are really interested in how this affects the businesses.
Okay, I don't agree with you, but that's fine.
Okay.
This was a committee meeting. David, you're on.
All right, well, my issue seems very silly after listening to a very important issue, and I have a heavy heart after listening to it, very heavy heart. I've worked in the Upper West Side since 1994, so it's most of my adult life. So I love the Upper West Side. I love the community. I love the people. I'm affected by everything you guys talked about tonight. So it's a very heavy heart that, you know, I wish I was smart enough to solve it all. It's just, it really makes me very sad. Anyway, so the city has allowed the roadside seating, as we all know. I have for the past 23 years, I've had a sidewalk cafe. I cannot do anything in front of Amsterdam because I have the bike lane, and then I also have a turning lane. What I do have, because Fred's actually starts in Amsterdam and L's down 83rd Street, I'm actually in 3 separate buildings. So right where you see the mail truck right there, I would like to do some seating, actually a little past that. There's a someone just changed the angle, but perfect. There's a red sign just to the top left of the mail truck that's a no standing anytime. So you can self-certify for a roadside cafe. If I self-certify, it's a lie, because self-certify means that I've met all the requirements. I can't get roadside seating because it says no standing anytime. So if I do self-certify, first of all, I'm lying, and God forbid someone gets hurt, my insurance company is not very happy with me right now anyway, but they certainly will not, that's a great photo. They will not protect me. And I also will never put anyone at risk like that by putting seating outside illegally. It's not worth it. So I spoke to the Children's Museum, and they said those signs are there because of them, because busloads of kids would get dropped off. And, you know, when I first opened Fred's in '97, you could park on both sides of the street. And that was that way for many years. And it got changed, and then they changed it back to parking, and then they quickly changed it back to no standing. So what I would like to do is take a portion of the no standing. I don't know how far the photo goes down the block. If you can go west on that photo. So right there, there's there you go. I want to go to this tree. So that's my kitchen door right there, the basement kitchen door. They keep moving it. If you look south at that photo, is that possible?
These are not my photos.
Yeah, I don't know. Someone's doing a great job. So that's my kitchen door right there, next to the blue, right to the right of the blue and gray garbage pails. That's my basement door. And that's my kitchen. It would actually make sense for me to have roadside right there, because I can actually run the food right out. I would want to go there, and I would want to go east to the tree that's a little more east. And that would give, it's the other, yeah. There you go. So I basically want to go from where the flower box ends on this one. When I say ends, I mean, and to that one. So the people going, making a left off Amsterdam or coming, or the fire truck coming down 83rd Street would still have more than enough space. I just need somebody. I called DOT, they sent me to the borough planner. I called the borough planner, they sent me back to DOT. I don't want them to change the signs, because what would happen then is someone would park there. What I would like is just basically a letter from an official agency saying that I'm permitted to do this. It would help tremendously. You know, right now it's August. It really won't help much in August because it's hot, it's rainy. But in September, if kids do come back to school, I know the schools are open, but I know from some parents they're not coming back. But if they do come back, it would be very helpful if I had additional seating on the side, because if you do walk by my restaurant, and I do adhere to the 6 feet apart rule. So, you know, I don't have as many seats as I normally would with my sidewalk, with my normal sidewalk cafe. So I need help. I need just someone with common sense to say, this makes perfect sense for this restaurant owner to do this, but I keep getting bounced around, and, you know, I have some people helping, but again, I'm getting ping pong back and forth. So thank you.
Mark?
So I reached out to the only expert in this that I know, and that's Andrew Ritchie, who was kind enough to respond from the wilds of the Adirondacks about this. I also reached out to the Department of Transportation earlier today to say, is there an opportunity to change the street, the no standing, to something that would allow you to use that space? I haven't heard back from them yet. They're usually pretty good, so hopefully by midday tomorrow I'll hear something. But to your larger point of, rather than changing the parking regulations, and as I understand it, the parking regulations are there in order to facilitate people going to the Children's Museum of Manhattan, which of course isn't even open right now, and that there will be plenty of room down the block even after using the space that you propose. So my question to Andrew Ritchie was, how do we get a waiver? How do we get some sort of permission? And he said the system is not really developed or devised for waivers or permissions. Well, yeah, and in one sense, all of us asked them to make this a turnkey, streamlined operation so that restaurateurs would not have to sit around waiting for city agencies to take action, hence the self-certification thing. All the respect in the world for you not fudging the rules, but instead trying to live within them. But apparently, and I'll continue to work on this with the DOT, who are the arbiters of permission, along with our chair. I involved the co-chairs of our transportation committee in this, to see if there is in some way, one way or another, we can do this, because you deserve the opportunity that everybody else is taking advantage of. But unfortunately, the sensible solution that you're proposing is not within the capacity of the people you want to act on your behalf to do so. So we'll try to find another way to screw in this light bulb.
Right. Well, I appreciate it. Obviously, you guys, again, have much bigger things to deal with. And I tried to just handle this myself, but I've you know, come up against the wall. So any help or advice or assistance would be greatly appreciated. And I commend you all for all that you're doing for the community. Again, having worked here now for 26 years, this is very, very hard times indeed. And trying to stay positive and, you know, silly as possible whenever that permits. But thank you all for all that you're doing. And, you know, once in a while I get a customer that yells at me. So I can imagine, you know, some of the people who are contacting you and are angry. And I'm sorry that you have to deal with that. And again, thank you all for your support. It's really sincerely and humbly appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you, David. And thank you, Barbara is the one who brought it to our attention that you were going to be here tonight. So thank you, Barbara Adler.
Yes.
Mark, I hate to ask a question, but should we write a letter to DOT?
I've already written to DOT
Yes,
in the nature of a question, not in an advocacy position, but we could write a letter because we had our resolution on
Right.
June 2nd. So that is, if we had to write a letter, we could.
Thank you. I think Stephen Brown wanted to, I think you've got one of the last words, Stephen. I know you wrote that you wanted to say something.
Well, look, I'll just share that I wanted to take a moment to support Mark and to a certain degree defend him. You know, in all my conversations with Mark, he's been very kind and supportive of when we've talked about and empathetic to these people. And if it came across wrong, I wanted to be a second person to defend him and not have him defend himself. And in all my conversations, he has always been willing to listen and evolve his position. So that's what you need in a leader. And if he thought this was the right thing to do now, I think the biggest thing to focus on is now that it looks like we're going to have a meeting. So, you know, it's to make these decisions is never easy. And I just wanted to take a moment to say that.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Before we go, I want to say also, I share Steve's sentiments. You know, I support Mark for the same reason that Steve just said. I also want to, I want you all to keep in mind that we are under a state of emergency. So a lot of things that the government will do, the city will do, they're going to be doing them without consultation, as we saw, and as it already has happened. And I think the best opportunity that we have to be able to have anything positive come out is to have that working group going, so that the working group, if the working group is established, it will be a means of communication between DHS, the service providers, and the community. And as we know, Mark is working on that, so we just have to wait now and see what happens. Anita?
That's great. Peter?
Real quick, I missed the last number of minutes, I guess 20 minutes, whatever, because I got called downstairs because there was a woman acting out on the street. And I know of her and have dealt with her, and just want to say, as you develop a protocol for down there, need to keep us in mind. North of 96th Street, we've been dealing with these issues for decades, and for the most part, it's not a problem, except when it becomes a problem. I mean, we've got a lot of families up here, and a lot of kids, and a number of people with mental health issues, and the whole system needs to be looked at, and we need to support our local providers and maintain some contact with them, so that they hear what we're seeing also. So just feeling like that would be a real help right now. Thank you.
Also, before we go, I'd like to congratulate Peter on the open Amsterdam Street on Saturday for restaurants to be on the street between 97th and 110th. And there were some issues, but I'm sure that going forward that things can improve.
There will probably continue to be some issues, but thank you for coming out, Christian. It was, it turned out towards the end of the day, it was really beautiful. There was still some loud music that wasn't intended, but other than that, it was really nice at the end of the day. So, oh well, okay, thanks. Come back out. It's every Saturday through October.
Thanks.
Can you do that below 96th Street?
They won't let me. They won't let me. They're trying to. I had to. I mean, we were Christian. We were slow opening up because of problems between 97th and 96th Street.
Right.
They hadn't given us that, and finally we just took it with the police, and now they've acknowledged that they should have done that from the beginning, but that it took the police and us working together on that. So, anyway, have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your work.
I think Doug had asked you a question, Doug. What was your question?
I
You
just
asked me-
asked, I said that you recently survived a fire at your establishment too. So I just wanted to point that out. You've been through a lot of hardship lately. Sorry.
It's, and that's okay. Nobody got hurt. We're starting to, and that's by far the main thing. If anybody got hurt, I wouldn't have gone back because the karma wouldn't have been good. We are starting to slowly rebuild. Obviously, COVID has slowed that all down, and they've had some contractors come in that don't wear masks, so I not very politely asked them to leave. We are starting slowly, and I remain hopeful. I remain hopeful. So fingers crossed that I've had a good relationship with my landlord. So we're going to have the difficult conversation very soon, and I'll know much more in the very near future, I believe. So, but thank you all again.
Okay, thank you all.
Everybody, and I guess we'll wait to hear from Mark. I am going to prepare a letter about the sweat. So you'll all have it, BCI will have it next week to review. Susan, if you'd like me to send it to you, because you're a fantastic editor, I'll be happy to do so in an honorary BCI person. This is a neighborhood. This is a remarkable neighborhood. When I moved here in '77, I was the music therapist at Kirby Hospital at Manhattan State Psychiatric Center. And all of my patients were at the Endicott. We had the bridge. We had services, psychiatric services that made it feasible. So when you put at-risk populations into a neighborhood without services, there are going to be issues. And DHS should have consulted with us, and that's really what the issue is all about. And I think it's a travesty that more families couldn't have been here who are also homeless, and they're out by LaGuardia Airport with no access to transportation. It just should have been done better. And maybe it will be, because who knows how long COVID's going to be going on. When we asked DHS how temporary was, they couldn't answer, because none of us know. Anyway, the most important thing is everybody be safe, wear masks, and we'll wait to hear from you, Mark, and we're all with you. Okay, thank you. Thank you all for coming tonight. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, everybody.
Be safe.